Press hockey coverage with Jim Biringer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer. Back alongside Rob Simpson. He was here for the Vancouver Canucks, linked above here on YouTube. And he's back again. This time he's talking about the Seattle Kraken over at Seattle Hockey Insider. He does Vancouver Hockey Insider as well. Rob Simpson, welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much. Brought my bad hair and everything. The two cities without traffic about 2 hours apart. So, yeah, I'm kind of the senior reporter in both markets, come to think of it. VancouverHockeyInsider.com and SeattleHockeyInsider.com. Yowza.
Yowza. And we talked about the Seattle Kraken quite a bit, actually, last year. You came on a couple times, and we talked about players that could have been moved at the deadline. We talked about big clip that made the rounds was the GM and the coach and what was going to happen at the end of the season. And you even had the line at the beginning of the year, Seattle wasn't a playoff team, which brings me to my first question. And my first point of this is, why get rid of Dan Bylsma when mostly everybody knew that they weren't a playoff team?
Player development, preparation, game nights, the whole 9 yards. They would have been better off with Dave Haxtell and given him another run at it. I don't know what the relationship with guys are just tired of listening to the same message after 3 seasons. But they clearly admitted as executives and ownership, for that matter, that it was a mistake. Having Disco Dan as bringing him up from Coachella Valley just didn't work out for a number of reasons. And, they referred to it as a risk. So it's not unusual at all to have your AHL guy come up into an NHL position if you're not retreading a former NHL coach. I mean, it happens relatively often. So they did it, didn't work out, and now they move on to Lane Lambert.
And Lane Lambert was on the island. He was there after Barry Trotz, and he was kind of, his ways of doing things out on the island. They tried to follow Trotz. It didn't work out. Then Patrick Waugh came in there down in the island, and now he's there. And what do you think Lane Lambert can do for this hockey club? Again, expectations, in my opinion, probably not playoffs this year because the Pacific Division is just too tough. But what can we expect from Lane Lambert coming in there?
Well, adjusting to last year or transitioning from last year will be more structured for sure. He has a reputation as a defensive coach. I know management prefers to think of it as quick transitions. In other words, being de-oriented. The whole idea is to turn that puck over and be very much north-south. The personality and the identity, which is so important in the league for a team to have for consistent performance and camaraderie and chemistry, is an identity. And the identity that this team had under Haxtell when they made the playoffs was relentless. They were relentless. They were very much north-south. They got scoring from everywhere. And they were gnarly on the forecheck. Kind of Carolina, a poor man's version of the Carolina Hurricanes in terms of that relentless behavior. So I think they'd like to get back to that. I think they'd like to be defensively conscientious in all 3 zones and keep the pressure up. That's kind of the idea, because they're not the most talented team, particularly up front. So they're going to have to do it based on work ethic, based on structure, based on systems. And I think that's what Lane Lambert will bring to the table, which they probably didn't possess enough of last season.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you mentioned their playoff run, I think they had like 10, 15 guys that, well, I know they at least had 15 guys that had 10 or more goals, and there was at least 5 to 7 guys that had 20 or more goals. And that's hard to when you have that kind of depth scoring, it's hard to, replicate it year after year. And then some guys transitioned out, and, staying there for a minute, Rob Brindamore was the GM. And we had questions about him, and it was a legit one. Like, are they gonna keep him around? The start of the expansion draft that hasn't really worked out. What are they gonna do? They bump him up, and now Jason Botterill's in there. And what can we expect from those two in the management section of the team?
Well, just a mental fart on your occasion.
Yes,
you may do it all the time. Not Rod Brindamore.
Ron Francis. That's right. Ron Francis. I'm thinking of Carolina. Right.
I know.
Ron Francis, though, again, it's the, we talked about Ron Francis at the end of the year, and, was his job on the line? Because you mentioned it down in Carolina. He didn't get his fifth year. He was entering his fifth year. The expansion draft wasn't really that well. Teams really not improved, actually taking steps backwards. They bump him up. Jason Botterill's in there. What do we expect now?
Well, here's the thing. You got to remember, Ronnie Francis, when he was GM in Carolina, never made the playoffs. Ronnie Francis gets hired in Seattle. Todd Lywicki basically says, when he got off the elevator, I didn't know whether to shake his hand or ask him for his autograph. So there's a little bit of jock sniffing, so to speak, there. You got a legend, top 5 scoring all time in the National Hockey League, multiple Stanley Cups. You can go on and on about Ronnie Francis as a player. Didn't really find success in Carolina, had the one season here, is not super proactive in terms of the trade market, which is opposite of Jimmy Rutherford up the road in Vancouver. Even though he's turned his duties over to Patrick Alvin 3 seasons ago, he still has his fingers. It was just a natural progression for Francis to take the position upstairs. It fits him better. I don't think he's that proactive as a guy, day to day. I think it's almost beneath him in a way, to be quite honest. He serves better as kind of a higher executive board of governor, type guy going to the board of governor meetings and representing the team. That fits him. So Jason Botterill gets a crack at it. Not a great deal of success in Buffalo, but then again, that ownership and that team has just been kind of a mess for the last dozen years. So I think they're taking a pragmatic approach. They're not as if it's day one again, but they're starting over with Botterill. I like a couple of things that they've done. I like Ryan Lindgren added to the D corps, getting a 4-year contract at a reasonable number, 4.5. Freddie Gaudreau is a guy that you hope will get you 15 to 20 goals, wins face-offs, shootout guy. They need help there. They blew a lot of points in OTs and shootouts over the last couple of seasons. So they're getting after it. And I think they've had a couple of decent drafts, and they had a decent draft this summer.
Speaking of, you say being proactive with the new general manager in there, and obviously the Dallas Stars had a, clear cap space, but what's it like bringing a guy in like Mason Marchment in there? We see what he can do in Dallas. We've actually seen him around the league. He can pop like 20 goals, if not a little bit more. What does that mean for the team, especially offensively?
Means more net front presence, means bigger bodies in front and in the corners. Capo Caco's had a resurgent year with the change of scenery of with the Kraken. Looked refreshed. Comparable to his best numbers for a season when he was in New York, and that was stretched out. I think it was 82 games that best season in New York, and it was like 49 with the Kraken. But if you do the equivalent, he definitely appreciated the opportunity. I think he was probably bottom 6 most of the time in New York. Ice time was limited. Here, he might get an opportunity to be a first-line wing. He's going to be in the top 6. So to see what he can do will be fascinating for Capo. And I bring him up because he's a bigger body. He controls the puck. Marchment gets a 1-year deal. It's almost kind of a let's take a look. It's a look-see for him. But again, a big body who's going to try to work in front. And this team needs a little girth. They need a little size. They get pushed around a little bit up front in particular. So I think both those guys kind of fit the bill in terms of adding a little gusto in the corners, et cetera.
It seemed like the change of scenery revitalized Caco too, because it seemed like his time in New York, it was done. It's time to move on. You see guys, familiar faces there, and Eli Tolvanen is over there. They kind of had some chemistry. It feels like, Tolvanen, I've loved that pickup by the Seattle Kraken. Again, Nashville, what are we doing giving guys away that could have been your future? Hey, but one team's lost another team's game, and I hope that's a player that Seattle figures out, hey, you know what, we can keep him and he can help us in our future.
I did a piece not too long ago about Tolvey on Seattle Hockey Insider.com, just talking about the fact that he's due to have a big season. He is Finnish. He had a great world championship for Finland. He was left off Four Nations Cup. Then he has an amazing world championship. So his confidence is at a high. He also has a contract year coming up. He's one of the 5 guys that will be looking for a new contract before next summer. So it's a pending UFA situation. I think he's going to take advantage of that. He had a career high in goals last year with 23 of them. He's been healthy the last 2 seasons. He's played 81 games both the last 2 seasons. I think there's a lot of things working in his factor, including the fact he's entering his prime. He's a 26-year-old. He's a guy who had a lot of expectations coming out of Finland back in 2017. And there was just a lot of pressure. There was a lot of opportunity. Nashville's forward group was pretty stacked at that point. He might have been a little bit too cocky at that point. He's grown up. He's matured. There's a lot of things working in Tolvanen's favor. So I think this could be a big year for him. And I think of those 5 free pending UFAs that will be coming around, he might be one of the first 2 to sign, just because I think if he starts out like gangbusters, they're going to want to lock him up for the long term. And we'll see if he just wants to wait and play the market, because there could be something fat waiting for him if he does hang on. But I think the team, if he's continuing the trend, they're going to want to lock him up and they're going to pay him.
Yeah, I mean, the cap's going up again significantly next offseason. So, and it feels like, those teams that they see comfort in, like a Tolvanen, they could keep him around for some dollars instead of testing the free agent market. And just on your site, looking at that article you mentioned about the 5 guys, Tolvanen, Jaden Schwartz is there, Jordan Eberle is another, Jamie Alexiak, Mitchell Stevens, and then obviously Marchment, potentially could be on the move if the team doesn't, do well. You see outside of Tolvanen, because you feel like he could stick around, even though maybe he waits it out. Could the other guys be on the move?
I think Alexiak's gone regardless. If the team's struggling, got to remember with these UFAs, if the team's out of the playoffs come Christmas or come U.S. Thanksgiving or Christmas, they'll start moving guys, definitely by the deadline. I think Alexiak's gone either way. He's 32. He's diminishing returns at this point. They like his size, but otherwise it's not getting better. So he would definitely be shipped out at the trade deadline. And if not, he'll walk. Interesting. The other 2 guys, you're in your 30s, Jaden Schwartz. I don't want to be cynical here and suggest that you're all competitors and guys want to win the Stanley Cup just like they did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But is it as strong a feeling? Is there too much of a comfort level now? So, and I bring that up because Jaden Schwartz, he's won a cup in St. Louis. So if he's happy here and he comes up with a decent number, why not stick around? Jordan Eberle, captain, hasn't won a cup.
Nope.
I know he loves it in Seattle. His family apparently loves it in Seattle. Would he be content to, sign one last contract and ride off into the sunset, knowing in the back of his mind that this team's not going to be winning a Stanley Cup in the next 3 seasons unless something dramatic occurs, like they pick up a star top-line center? Then things would change. But at this point, that'll be interesting. I think, that's the crystal ball is tough on those guys, but given their age and their situation, at least one of them is going to hang around for another contract.
So this popped into my head because Seattle's in one of those quote unquote, well, not quote unquote, but no income tax states.
Yep.
Would one of those guys force their way to a team or a team in one of the other states that had a chance to win? I know
I
it's
don't
not
know.
supposed to play a role, and I got to have fun with it because I don't think it means anything, to be honest. I think everybody wants to win. But, everybody says, oh, well, players, pick and choose where they want to go. Well, if that was the case, everybody'd be going to the same 7 states with the same teams, and Seattle would actually be good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And Eberle, at this point in time, he's made enough money. He's far enough along in his career where if his motivation was strictly win a cup, he's not going to give a hoot.
Yeah.
Whether it's a no income tax state or not, he's going to want to win the cup. So he's going to go to the best team he can possibly find. So, and all these guys, there's modified no trade clauses here and there and all that good stuff. But there's the 5 that I think one's coming back for sure, one's leaving for sure, and the other 3 are somewhere in the middle.
And I was on your podcast, and I was on for your article about Jared McCann, and because Jared McCann's an interesting player because he can play 2 positions on the wing center. Seattle's tested him out at the center position. Seems to have done well. His faceoff percentage has to go up a little bit, but he's a wanted man from some teams around the league, like New Jersey, which, by the way, they told them, forget it, not happening. Montreal, I saw could be connected to other teams. He's a good player, can pot goals in. But as I said, I want to ask this again: do we feel like is he a 40-goal guy or is he a 30-goal guy? Because if he's a 40-goal guy, that price is a lot higher, and I still think the price is high for a guy like McCann.
Well, even a 30-goal guy, he's a discount right now. He's been the team's leading scorer for 4 straight seasons. He's kind of sneaky crafty. He scores in different ways. And $5 million.
Yeah.
I mean, guys are making more than that for 30 goals per season. And whatever, 60 or 70 points. He's good for that. Center position, he was effective as a playmaker, but God, he can't win faceoffs. I mean, awful. You could almost have Freddie Gaudreau take the draw and then skate off, which we see obviously in NHL games. Guys take draws and get quickly replaced in various situations. I mean, but that's asking a bit much when you're wanting McCann's line out there in the offensive zone. It'd be tough to be swapping centers in that situation. So, I mean, if again, same thing, let's say by Christmas, to be fair, as opposed to U.S. Thanksgiving, which, the Kenny Holland rule, we pretty much know who's in or out by then, which is only a month and a half into the season. But it's it's relatively
pretty damn accurate.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, wetting the bed by then, you're not going to come back. There are exceptions, of course, St. Louis Blues in 2019 being the biggest all time, going from worst to first. But generally, there's only 1 or 2 that slide in that weren't in at that time. But let's just say Christmas. If they're not getting it done, then McCann's name will resurface, despite the fact that he has a full year remaining on his contract. I think that there keeps him around longer. There's no pressure. There's no leverage against the Kraken to move him when they're going to get him for another year for $5 million. It's kind of like the JT Miller talk 2 seasons prior to when he actually got traded, when he had a full year. He was the leading scorer on the Canucks, had a full year remaining. Yet the talk was, oh, they're going to trade him. They're going to trade him. No, they weren't going to trade him. Not then. Why would they? So same thing with McCann. There's no pressure on the Kraken, even if they're not getting it done, to move him, unless the player says, hey, I want to go to greener pastures. But it'd be almost irresponsible to get rid of him and his $5 million contract when he has a year remaining on it. Worry about get the pressure put on you the following season. There's no reason to do it this coming season.
Especially for a guy, like you said, is a 30-30 guy, like average 30-30 guy at $5 million. Like, that's a steal in today's market. It really is. You mentioned some of the prospects and the drafting by Seattle, and that's something like I like to keep my eye on because they did pick up Shane Wright. I've seen improvement in him from when they drafted him. Matty Beniers, I feel like there's another level to Matty Beniers that needs to show for Seattle because he had that great rookie season, kind of came back a little bit, earned a big contract, but I feel like he can go to another level.
Well, he needs to get bigger and stronger. That's a ongoing thing for him. He's a tall enough kid. He's just hasn't bulked up. He needs to get stronger on the puck. And if he's not going to be stronger on the puck, then he needs guys around him that are going to be stronger on the puck. So we'll see. He's not a number one. I mean, he's an excellent two-way centerman. So they have him slotted as number one right now. But that's simply because they have a lot of the same thing in terms of caliber. So you got Stevenson, you got Wright, you got Beniers. Beniers and Stevenson would be above Wright in terms of the caliber at this point. But then they drafted Berkeley Catton, who could make the club probably on the wing. I think Ty Cartier is vulnerable for sure in the bottom six. I love the 19-year-old Nathan Villeneuve, who's a winger, who's a madman, who brings a lot of grit and intensity. And then they also drafted Jake O'Brien, who's going back to the Ontario Hockey League, another center. So you got a lefty and a righty that they drafted at center the last 2 years of the 8th overall pick. And I think those guys have a legitimate future with the franchise. If not, they're also trade commodities if you're looking for an active number one center somewhere.
That's very true. I mean, I like Jake O'Brien. I thought that was a heck of a pick by Seattle at the draft. Thought that was a solid pick, the right pick for them and what they needed, because it just feels like, that the number one question last year when we talked about it is similar to what we said with the Vancouver thing. Is it feels like the same question, the big burning question: do they even have a center? Because like a number one center, because it feels like they got like 2s and 3s.
Yeah, it's the burning question. And we talked about Vancouver the other day. They have Petey, and then there's drop off. The difference and the thing that the Kraken have in their favor is they have depth in that hunk. In other words, Chandler Stevenson can get things done. I remember thinking he was more effective on the wing when he was in Vegas, but anyway. And then Shane Wright, as you said, is showing signs of improvement. And then we mentioned Freddie Goudreau earlier. So definitely a work in progress in Seattle in terms of that middle. But I think they are getting stronger, and their depth's got stronger as well. Ryan Winterton was another guy that they were really in love with as a prospect. He's still around, but has not developed to the point I think they thought he was going to 2 years ago.
Yeah, and then obviously like a big strength to me from, like we said before, the big strength for Seattle was on the back end, right? That's the way Ronnie Francis kind of did it in Carolina. He did it with the expansion draft here. So Vince Dunn's there, Adam Larson's there, you have Montour, you mentioned Lindgren. It feels like that decor could be, with Lane Lambert coming in, can protect the goaltender a little bit more. And you're not relying on Joey Decord every night to win games, or Grubauer, or whoever's going to be in net. Matt Murray's over there now. It just feels like if you can protect your goaltender and make his life a little bit easier, it feels like they're back to that kind of D that they had when they went to the playoffs and went to the second round.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the strong suit of the hockey club as it stands right now. Albeit what I've mentioned about Alexiak, the pending UFA, it's the strong suit top to bottom of the club as we speak. Gruby is trying to come back. He was the number one for a couple of seasons. He's still making $5.9 million for this season and another one, which is ridiculous, but they couldn't really buy him out because they had to keep him around because it's, Joey Decord's kind of new to this number one thing, and they gave him a 5-year extension. So they're feeling pretty good about it, their goaltending, but it can be fickle. And can Joey Decord keep it up? Probably. However, with that in mind, you move up to the blue line, and it's, as it stands at the start of the season, a pretty consistent bunch. I mean, Dunn and Larson have been together for a while. They work well together. Brandon Montour just got invited to Canada's Olympic orientation camp, so that's pretty impressive. Riker Evans, who's a lefty that can play the right side, is a young guy that's only getting better. And then Alexiak, and then we mentioned Lindgren. So that's a pretty strong group. If that's a healthy group, and they were, by the way, among the many factors that played into them making the playoffs in 22-23, they stayed healthy as a team, and they stayed healthy on the blue line. In fact, I think if I recall correctly, it was man games missed on the blue line that playoff season. It was like 12 or 13 games total the whole season for the blue line. So they're not going to probably get that lucky, but if they're healthy, that's a damn good core starting the season.
All right, I got to ask you. Obviously, we've mentioned Capo and we've mentioned Tolvanen. We mentioned the centers, but where is this team going to find its offense?
No. That's the $1 million question for the Kraken. And I mean, we've hammered the center position a little bit. You actually made reference to it the playoff year. It was Morgan Geekie, Ryan Donato, and Daniel Spronger were the main three back there. I think they ended up between 30 and 40 goals. The team had the highest shooting percentage in the National Hockey League at even strength. So 2 more factors as to why they made the playoffs out of the blue. Probably not going to see that again in either case. So they're going to be hard pressed again. One, they need to improve the power play. It was 21st in the National Hockey League last year, I believe, 23rd on the PK. So their special teams need to improve. It's just kind of more of the same for the most part. That chemistry that they established between Beniers, Schwartz, and Kakko has to continue. Shane Wright hopefully improves. As I mentioned, Tolvanen hopefully has his biggest year by far. And that's kind of it. You're playing your cards, the ones you're dealt, and they're bringing in some young bodies. This Yanni Newman guy can fire the puck as a 4th liner. I don't see Ty Cartier hanging around in the top 4 lines, to be honest. I think there's too much pressure from prospects below him. But other than that, it's just a matter of finding chemistry and getting it done with the roster that we've talked about.
So I guess the big question now for Seattle is, outside the offense, is do we expect them to be a playoff team again?
Ooh, the $1 million question. I'm going to put them right at the bubble. I don't think they're going to finish 20 points behind the second wild card spot like they did last year. Part of that was once the writing was on the wall, some teams just play loosey-goosey and post wins that are meaningless. They were just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And, lost as much as they won as we played nonsense hockey, played out the string. So that number might be a little misleading, but I don't see them 20 points behind the second wild card spot come the end of the season. I think there'll be more of a factor. I think a part of this will be, where are the LA Kings? I think Vancouver's a playoff team, probably in the 3 slot, if not the 4 slot in the wild card position. Will Edmonton drop off at all during the regular season remains to be seen. Not that Seattle's going to hop past the Oilers. So it's, we'd almost have to start evaluating the Central a little bit to see, what Seattle's chances are matching up standings wise against other wildcard teams from that division. I think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. I don't think they're going to, I think they're 4 or 5 in the Pacific, and it depends what's happening in the Central. So do they get in? Probably not.
But it could be coming in a couple of years again.
Yeah. I mean, they could sneak in. I mean, I legitimately think they're very much on the bubble. I love the D. I think Joey Decourt, if he keeps it going, they're sound in net. He needs to get some help from his backup. I think they were league worst, or one of the worst 3 in terms of wins from backups. They got no help.
No help.
Gruby or anybody else. So it was Joey Decourt all day long. So they're right on the bubble.
Right there.
If they get the scoring, they get in. If they don't, they don't.
Yeah, and it's just going to be another season of player watch in Seattle. You hope they can bounce back. What do you got going with yourself there, Mr. Rob?
I'm going to be, I'm kind of already been hammering some stories and breaking a couple stories here in the preseason, both Vancouver and Seattle, but I'm going to keep hammering the previews and getting some big time guests coming on the pod here in the next few days. Actually, by the time folks see this, they will have already appeared. But that's all good because I think you're holding on to this for a couple days. Just keeping busy, getting ready for the preseason. We're only what do we got here? 2.5 weeks to camp.
Yeah, can't wait for it. Great dissecting the Seattle Kraken. Again, check out the Vancouver Canucks breakdown with Mr. Rob Simpson. Again, check them out. Vancouver Hockey Insider, Seattle Hockey Insider. Get them on .com, exactly. And check them out. Simmer Puck on YouTube as well. So He's the man. Thank you so much for coming on today and dissecting the Seattle Kraken.
Jimmy, baby, my pleasure. We'll talk to you soon, and I'll be flipping you around to talk Devils probably in the next couple of weeks.
Sounds good. Guys, Full Press NHL Podcast. Again, Rob Simpson. Like, subscribe, comment. Again, catch him. VancouverHockeyInsider.com, SeattleHockeyInsider.com. Guys, take care, and we'll be back again real soon.
Full Press Hockey Coverage with Jim Biringer.